What not to do when building a startup. I have built 4 or 5 startups at this point, Whopo, Lamberg, Alice.ai, MBT Lab, and a few others that I'm working on that I'm not gonna reveal right now. But there is many things that you should not be doing. Just like the late Charlie Munger would say, if you don't do what you're not supposed to do, you end up doing what you're supposed to do, right? Which is basically inverse, always invert. He would always invert the things to know what to do. If you want to be successful in your job, don't do the stupid things and you're naturally gonna be successful, right? So what not to do when building a startup so that you can avoid the costly mistake that I have made and hopefully you get to success faster. Point number 1 is do not build on top of giants. What I mean by that is do not build on top of Facebook or Google, because the problem with that is they can just add that feature or they can just block you off and you'll be gone pretty much. When you build on top of giant, they have so much control. Like they're giving you the data, they're giving you all the things you need from their API, from their platform. They can change their policy anytime. There have been hundreds of companies who have built on top of giants and it typically does not work as expected because there's always something happening. The giants are always moving. They're always like breaking things. And for them, you are nothing. They don't care about you. So as much as you want to consider them as your partner and you're building things together, you can look it up. There are many companies in the internet that had built on top of giants, and Facebook changed the policy, Google changed the policy, Apple changed the policy, and they were like pretty much vanished overnight. That has happened many times, and do not make the mistake of building on top of giant because you relied on one thing. When you do that, your business becomes a bottleneck, right? That is a huge risk. Investor and the companies would not want to buy the business with such an amount of risks. You end up creating a massive problem basically for yourself. The next thing is that do not build on a niche that you have no experience in. If you want to build in a niche that you do not have experience in, then maybe you should just go get a job. Maybe just work in that niche. Maybe like do something around that niche, working with that customer, right? So if you want to build something for law firm or lawyers and you have no idea what they do, and you have this lawyer who's telling you all these things, but he's not a partner and you don't know if it's a universal problem or not. If you don't know if other lawyers have the same problem, right? You don't want to end up building one product for this guy. So what you need to do is that, of course, don't go to a law school. What you need to do is become a paralegal or something that can, give you exposure to those problems, see what it's like. And that's what you should do if you want to build in a niche that you have no experience in. But first of all, do not go to the niche that you don't have experience in. The world is big and there is a lot of opportunities. If you think what you know doesn't have any opportunities, then you're wrong, because there is typically a opportunity in what you are doing. So I recommend make sure to look harder, make sure to know the problem, right? Even the problem that you're having right now, which is building a startup, there is a solution there, right? So maybe you can find a solution for other startups. I think you should look closer to what you already know than trying to build in a niche that you don't know anything of. The other lesson is do not go to sexy niches. Typically, there's always something trending, right? There was NFT thing, that was Bitcoin thing, and then there's Lububu doll thing right now. I'm not sure what that is, to be honest. There's always something happening, right, in the world. Every year, there's something happening. You want to go to a new industry, but don't go to a sexy industry. For example, influencer marketing creators. That is a very hard thing to do. And out of many creators, like very few actually make good monies. And the thing is that those few who make money, they are in the spotlight, right? They're saying you can do these things, right? But it doesn't work out for everybody. So I think becoming an influencer, becoming a creator is one of those sexy niches. There is not a lot of money there. Now you can become a creator to help grow your business, right? To build your personal brand, but don't have that just your one thing. If that's your main thing, then you're probably gonna suffer. I can be wrong as well. But do not go to the sexy niche. Look into the economics of the niche and where people are getting richer. So you want to go to the new niches, new industry, but you don't want to go to the sexy industry where everyone is trying to go to. If everyone is trying to go to that thing, then it's going to be competitive, which is going to be a problem. So do not go to the old industry. Old industries are typically established, meaning there's not a lot of new things happening in the old industries. There's typically billionaires in that industry, and it's typically always M&A focused. People are buying and selling businesses in that industry, right? So for example, HVAC, right? Electric company or something like that. Those are old industries. Unless you have something new idea, unless you have some crazy idea, then maybe it will work. But even then, the barrier to entry is going to be harder, because what people do is that in this old industry, people lobby and they add a lot of regulation and rules so that new people cannot come in to the industry, and they raise the cost for you to get into the industry, which is a problem. So if you're brand new, do not go to those old industry, because they don't want you. They don't want you taking their money, basically, right? Unless you have something new and something, crazy idea that you think is going to work. For example, Carvana in auto industry, right? A vending machine for car, right? They did something new, and I thought that was very different and interesting and exciting. But if you don't have something new and you don't have a lot of funding, then it's typically not a best idea to go to the old and established industry. The other lesson when building a startup is do not go after the big and the bold and the crazy idea. I understand it sounds nice. If you're gonna do something, then why not go big? But the thing is that you're stupid right now. And the problem with being stupid is that you can put yourself in a big trouble when you take a lot of money from other people. If you're going after VC or raising a lot of fund, you can get into a lot of legal troubles, right? What you want to do is that you want to start with a couple of small startups, like just get your hands around it. You need practice. When you go to the gym, you don't go lift 100 pounds, you lift 10 pounds. You start with 20 pounds, right? And as you get better, you start lifting 100 pounds, right? So before you even think about like raising a VC fund, like do a couple of small startup, like see how it is actually like to build the entire product and ship the entire product. How does it feel, right? Then you'll be much more knowledgeable and you'll be much more experienced to actually grow that big billion-dollar company. So I think you should always start small. And many ideas are simple and hidden in the plain sight. For example, loom.com, it pretty much just records your screen. Like you just record a screen, send a link to somebody else. It's a simple concept. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Start with something simple and then increase the difficulty. Do not go to something harder right away because you don't know what you don't know and you need experience. The other lesson I have is, and what not to do when building a startup is do not sell to people who are broke. Typically you see these people who just got out of college. They have experience. They did a lot of projects in their college and they don't want to get a job. They want to start their own startup, but they don't know what to do. They don't have business experience. So what they do is that, oh, my friends are having difficulty finding a job, so I'm gonna make something for them. And I think that's stupid, to be honest, because you're trying to serve to an audience who are looking for a job. They're broke. They just got out of college and they have no money. And that's a problem, right? You want to sell to people who have money. Money is abundance to them. They have so much money, right? The problem that you will solve for them is going to be so much more valuable. If you solve their 100,000 problem, they'll pay you $5,000, $2,000, $10,000, right? But somebody who's trying to get a job, yes, you're going to get them a 200,000 job, but they're not going to be able to pay you upfront. It's going to take you a lot of time and money to get there. And they typically always have a student loan, right? So they got to pay that as well. So it becomes a problem, right? Sell to people who have money. Do not sell to people who are broke. Be careful, right? If you have never been in business, you have never done a business, you have never had a business, right? Then be careful who you sell to because the person who you sell to is going to make and break your business. So you got to know who your audience is and can they afford it? Are these people with the money, right? So make sure to sell to people who have money and do not sell to broke people. The final lesson not to do when building a startup is going after a harder sales cycle. Is trying to sell to Fortune 500. It's trying to sell to some big, like VC firm or some banks, right? It is very hard to sell to those customers and there is a lot of regulation. If you're making something for banks, it is very, very hard. I can tell you that because I have tried it already and the sales cycle takes months, right? And even if you just get one bank to onboard, you have to build a lot of custom tool for that bank. And if you get a second bank, you have to build some custom tools for them. It becomes a hassle pretty much. Remind you that it took you 1 year to get that customer and the whole year you have not been making much money. And even when the bank starts paying you, they don't pay you as much. You need like 10, 20 bank for your business economics to work, right? So it is just a very harder type of business. Do not sell to businesses that is harder to get clients of. So again, banks, government, Fortune 100, those are very, very tough businesses because it is very hard for you to get the top CEO or the top CTO to make the decision for you because they usually have a lot of things going on and you're probably in the bottom of their list. So sell to people who can make decisions right away. Sell to small businesses. Sell to a freelancer. Sell to agencies, sell to businesses with less than 10, 20, 50 team members, right? But do not go after those like 1,000 employees company because it's going to be very, very hard. So you want to be able to start reaching out to people and start getting customers right away. At the same time, I think there is a bottom ceiling as well. Like do not also try to sell to everybody. When you start selling to everybody, yes, if you have a great product, let's say you have a Netflix or you have ChatGPT, then yes, it's going to work. You're going to make a lot of money, but most of the time you don't. And it is very hard to make money selling to those very, very bottom level customer because they don't pay you as much. They complain about even $10 per month. They will charge back you. They will ask you for a refund even for just $10. So it becomes a problem. Typically, from my experience, it is best to sell to businesses because they can justify. They're making $100,000 from my work and I'm only charging $2,000. It is much easier for them to justify my work. So I hope you like all of these lessons of what not to do when building a startup. I'll see you on the next video.